Welcome, fearless viewers, to another chilling tale from our realm of horror. Tonight, we delve into the darkest corners of the human psyche, where shadows lurk and fear reigns supreme. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to our channel and join our growing community of horror enthusiasts. Help us reach our next milestone of 700 subscribers, as we continue to uncover spine-tingling stories that will haunt your dreams. Now, brace yourself, as the journey into the unknown begins. Last summer, I took a road trip to visit a couple of friends. I went to high school with them both. And they went to college out in California, and since moved there after graduating, so every summer, I try to go there at least once and visit because we've always been good friends. Last year I drove because there was a lot of places along the way that I wanted to go to. Many were parks or cool destinations to do some sightseeing. It would take a few days to do the entire drive. So I left early to be able to stop places that I wanted to. The first couple of days of the trip went really well. But on the third day, I was hoping to arrive and I found myself still driving at night. I still had a few hours left, and it was probably like 9 or 10 p.m. by now. The roads were quiet, which was nice. And I was looking forward to getting to my friend's place. I had plenty of fuel, but I needed to use the restroom and mind to get something to drink as well. So I decided to stop at the next exit, whatever it was. Well, there was a rest stop just a few miles up the road. I pulled off the highway straight into the rest area. Now this one was very small. It was not one of those big restaurants that has a truck stop and a gas station attached to it. This was just one fairly small building with one row of parking out front. When I got there, I noticed that it was pretty dark, and there appeared to be nobody else there at all. So I parked my car, got out, and then started walking to the building. I took my time and stopped to stretch a little, because I had been driving for such a long time. I remember though, as I was walking into the building, I did notice hearing a car entering the rest stop from the highway. I looked around inside of the rest of the building, which had a small area with brochures and vending machines. Then there was a hallway with a janitor's closet, and a men's restroom at one side and a woman's restroom on the other. I looked at one of the vending machines for a moment. Then I turned around and noticed that the car that had entered the rest stop was parking right next to mine. I found this to be a little bit odd with all the other open spaces. I went into the restroom and was back out within probably a minute or so. I noticed that the car was still parked next to mine and had the lights on. So it appeared as though the driver was still inside. This sort of made me wonder what the driver was doing. But overall, it didn't seem like a huge deal. Then I turned my attention back to the vending machine and decided what to get. Eventually, I picked and then got a drink. I looked back to my car. And the one next to mine was still running. I started walking to head out. But just a few feet from the door, I saw the engine turn off to the car next to mine. Then the driver's door opened and a man got out. I stopped where I was near the door. The man that started walking towards my car instead of going into the restaurant. Now this was really weird. The man walked around my car and went behind it where I couldn't see him. He almost seemed to crouch down as well. I kept watching and I didn't see him anymore. It appeared as though the guy was hiding behind my car for some reason, or possibly he was trying to break in or something. I didn't want to go out and confront him. So I stayed where I was. I watched for several minutes, expecting to see the man again at any moment. But I didn't. So apparently he was still hiding behind my car. Finally, I decided to go out and see what he was doing. I walked out of the building and got within about 20 feet of the two cars. I still couldn't see the guy at all, but I was sure that he was there. I called out to him asking what was going on, but I got no response. Now I didn't want to go to my car. I was afraid that it might be some kind of a trap or something. So I walked back to the rest stop and went inside. Once I was in there, I continued to watch, but I didn't see anything. For a few minutes, I wasn't really sure what to do. I started just walking around the small rest stop. And I remember I made my way down the hallway. This was at the back end and between the two bathrooms. I was sort of near the janitor's closet. And as I was over there, I heard the main door to the rest stop open. That had to be the guy that was hiding behind my car. I would have heard if another car had driven it. There was luckily a rear exit to the restaurant. I quickly walked over to it and left the building. I walked as fast as I could back around the building towards my car. Then I cut through the grass and headed to the sidewalk. As I was doing this, I heard the front door to the rest of the building open up. I looked over and saw the guy he was leaving and walking very quickly in my direction. I just started sprinting towards my car. I was able to make it there and then left as fast as possible. The man made it back to his car and got inside of it. But by then I was already driving off. As soon as I made it back onto the highway, I took the first exit. I could see the guy getting onto the highway from the rest stop a long distance back. And after taking my exit, I was able to lose the guy quickly by going down some other streets. After I got back to the highway again, I called the police and reported what happened. I think that man's behavior was really suspicious. I'm not sure what he wanted. I'm really glad that I got away from him though. A couple of years ago, I went on a road trip to go hiking in several different parks. I've been really into hiking for a long time now. And I've been to many cool locations. So on this road trip, I remember the second night I was driving on the highway. It was kind of late and I was basically in the middle of nowhere. I was about the only car on the road, it seemed. But soon, I noticed a car coming up behind me. I was in the right lane, and the car moved into the left lane to pass me. But when the car got about, even with the speed that I was going, instead of passing, it went the same as me. I saw something out of the corner of my eye and then looked over. The driver of this car was a guy that was bald and wearing sunglasses. He had rolled his passenger side front window down, and he was waving over at me. When I looked at him, he started making some hand motions. I rolled down my window. And I could tell that he was saying something as well. It kind of seemed to me like he was signaling that something was wrong with my car. He was yelling, but I couldn't hear a word that he was saying. We were going too fast. And I knew that this guy didn't know. Because I was several states away from where I lived. And I didn't recognize this guy. He continued to yell at me and make motions with his hands. I figured that something must be wrong with my car. Maybe I had a flat tire. Although everything seemed fine to me. I looked and my check engine light was not on. And I'm no car expert, but I didn't feel anything strange. Still, I was convinced that this man saw something that I didn't. I decided to take the next exit, which was coming up on the right. So I slowed down and the man remained next to me. Then I took the exit and the man followed in his car. I pulled into a gas station, which was about the only thing in that area. When I did, I saw that nobody else was there. I parked my car and the guy parked next to me. Then we both got out of our vehicles. The man approached me and said that there was something wrong with my car. He then told me that he saw it emitting black smoke. I asked him what that meant. And he said that it meant there was something seriously wrong with the engine. Then he told me to get in his car. And he would give me a ride to the nearest mechanic and get it fixed. When he said that, I got a bad feeling. Because I didn't really want to go anywhere with this guy. I told him to wait and tried to get him to explain more of the problem to me. And I also realized I hadn't noticed any kind of black smoke. I know it was dark out. But I just think that I would have noticed if my car was smoking. It seemed like it was running fine. The man asked me to get into his car again. Now I was getting a really bad feeling. And the guy was starting to seem really sketchy. I mean, why would he drive me to a mechanic? They would have to be closed by now, because it was nighttime. Before he said anything else, I just got right back into my car and shut the door and locked it. Man walked over as I started the engine. He was telling me to stop and started yelling my engine would break. I didn't believe him though. My car started up just fine. Man tried opening my driver's door, but I then drove away from him. He got back into his car as I was driving away. Luckily though, he did not follow me. I saw him stay in the gas station as I left, and then I merged back onto the highway. Now after my road trip, I did take my car to a mechanic. I was told that nothing was wrong with it at all. I know that the man was probably just trying to get me into his car. That really gives me the creeps. This is something that happened one time when I was going on a road trip. I was driving really late at night on the highway. So basically out of nowhere, this car started following me. I don't recall exactly when it started. I just know that I saw headlights behind me. And I was just driving like normal. But when I got stuck behind a semi-truck, I wasn't really thinking, and I just started going really slow for a long time. The semi was probably going at least 5 miles per hour below the speed limit. Normally in this kind of a situation, a car would go into the left lane and pass the slower truck, but I was paying more attention to just driving and listening to the radio. I had been driving for so long that I was just fine with going slow for a while. There really weren't many cars on the road at this time. So I was driving behind the truck for at least 5 minutes. And there was a car also behind me. Then I randomly came to my senses and realized, why are we going so slow? I then changed lanes and went into the left lane. And as soon as I did this, the car behind me did as well. So I noticed that then I passed the truck and moved back into the right lane. And the car following me did the same. I did find this odd, but still nothing really to worry about. But I noticed that the car was following me kind of close. Things remained like this for probably the next 10 minutes. I just had a bad feeling about how close the car was following me. And now I was noticing, then I approached another semi, going slow in the right lane. When I did this time, I decided to wait back again and see what the car behind me would do. I slowed down, and the car behind me did the same. I went slow behind the truck for at least a minute. Then the same instant that I put my turn signal on and changed lanes. The car behind me did too. After making it around the truck and settling back into the right lane again, the car was still behind me following at the same distance. We drove for a while and I was getting frustrated. I wanted this car to stop following me. That's when I decided to take the next exit and see what would happen. Now we were kind of in the middle of nowhere. So I was just hoping that there will be a truck stop or some kind of business with people around. Several minutes later, there was an exit and I took it. The car behind me did as well. I then took a ride. But realized that there really didn't seem to be anything over here. It just looked like mostly country land on both sides of the road. I then took my phone out and tried to look up the nearest police station. But I had no service being in the middle of nowhere. So I ended up messing up my directions and losing my math. Meanwhile, I was driving on this quiet road with the car still behind me. I then took another turn and so did the car following me. After that, I started making random turns. And each time that I did, the car behind me did as well. I really couldn't believe that this car was keeping up with me so well. I continued to take more random turns. And then I realized that I was completely lost. I had no idea how to get back to the highway. At that point, I started trying to figure out how to get back there. I would honestly rather be followed on the highway than some random country roads. At least on the highway, there are some other cars and I would be able to get to an actual city eventually. So for the next 10 minutes or so, I kept making random turns. But in an effort to find my way back. In the middle of this though, randomly, the car following me took a different turn. I honestly couldn't believe it. I kept going though, and didn't see the car again. After that, I continued making turns here and there for a while longer. Then I noticed that I actually had a phone signal again. I put my directions back in and was soon able to make it back to the highway, and then I continued my drive for the rest of the way. Nothing else like that happened. I don't know why that car was following me. I don't know who it was. And I don't know why they stopped following me. That was my scariest road trip experience though. A few years ago, I was taking a cross-country road trip for work. I was driving by myself, and each night would stop at a hotel and sleep for the night. Well, sometimes in certain locations, there are not very many options for hotels. So I remember that I drove late into the night one of the days. The hotel that I got was this little one. There was actually a motel. It was in a quiet town, they didn't have much of anything. The motel had 2 levels of rooms, and each one would open up to the little sidewalk in front of the parking lot. I didn't have high expectations from the start. It was a place to sleep and I was very tired. So I parked my car, got out, and then got my room key from the guy in the office. And I walked down the sidewalk to my room. It was at that point when I first saw this guy walking down that same sidewalk. It was a man wearing a black jacket. He was walking really slowly. I entered my room and then went inside. Then I pretty much started getting ready to go to bed. Maybe 10 minutes later, as I was getting into bed, I noticed out the front window the guy that I saw when entering you just kind of standing around was a little weird to me. The guy was not facing my window, but the other direction. I watched and finally, he walked a little bit to the right and out of view of my window. Then I went over and closed the shades. But just moments after that, the guy tried opening my room door. It was locked, so we couldn't get in. I didn't know what this guy was doing. I went back to the window and looked outside. I couldn't see the man anymore. And he was now gone. So then I went back to the bed and decided to try to go to sleep. But just moments later, there was knocking on my door. I figured it was the same guy, and I ignored it entirely. The guy didn't knock again in that moment. And I was so tired that I soon fell asleep. But I wasn't asleep for very long. I remember waking up and hearing somebody banging loudly on the front door. I knew that it was probably the same guy again. Then he started yelling as well. He was cursing and demanding that I open the door for him. I had no idea why this guy was bothering me. I called the front desk to the motel, but I got no response. Then I called the police. I shouted to the man that I was calling the police as well. He continued to yell at me from outside though. The guy kept trying to open the door every now and then and continued to bang on it almost the entire time. This went on for the next 10 minutes until the police got there. Then the man was arguing with the police until they escorted him off the property. I was finally able to go back to sleep. Early the next morning, I left and was happy to get out of there and back on the road. For the rest of my trip, I made sure to get hotels that were a little bit nicer than that one.